We've already taken the turn onto Fier Street, so now let's turn it back to 1978, where we'll face summer camp color wars, insufferably rude Sunnysiders, and more crazy nurses at Camp Nightwing in Fier Street Part 2. Today, as a continuation of the Fier Street series, we're going to take a look at everyone who dies in Fier Street Part 2, and if they could have lived. Our first death occurs 44 minutes in with Arnie, who takes an axe to the face courtesy of the recently psychotic Tommy. I really don't feel like there's much to analyze around Arnie's death. He had left the small chamber that Alice and Cindy were in before they discovered Tommy's name on the wall, and began to grow concerned. So he was completely unsuspecting and alone with Tommy at the time of his death. Because Arnie was the first to die, he was killed in one hit, and aside from finding a creepy witch's house, he had no reason to suspect any danger. I do not think he could have lived. The next to die is Jeremy at 53 minutes in. Now, Jeremy's death was heartbreaking to me as he is shown looking up to Tommy earlier in the film. The poor kid adores Tommy and is just full of fear and confusion as he's hacked to death by him. Adding insult to injury, he is bullied by Sunnysiders right before his devastating demise. I will give Jeremy credit though, because he understands that something is wrong to the point of backing away from Tommy when he begins to approach. But unfortunately, Tommy is too fast for Jeremy to register that it is time to run away. And even if he had run, Tommy is significantly taller and would likely catch up to the kid. Because of this, I'm going to say that Jeremy's death is slated. Up next, at 1 hour 3 minutes in, is Joan. Like the others, she does not suspect anything is wrong until she suddenly comes face to face with Tommy. She's confused at first, and then begins to scream as Tommy swings his axe at her. Since she's killed by the first blow and really has no time to run from Tommy, as with Jeremy, I do not think that Joan could have lived. At 1 hour 8 minutes in, 3 or maybe 4 Shadyside campers are killed by Tommy in the Sunnyside Color Wars jail. Now, I say 3 or 4 because I only see 3 on screen, but later on Counselor Nick finds their bodies and says the names of 4 campers. Moments before Tommy appears, the campers hear Nick calling out that the game is over, and the Sunnyside jailkeeper then tells them to stay put while he goes to find out what Counselor Nick was saying. If the Shadysiders hadn't listened to the jailkeeper and gone out with them, they definitely would have had a shot at life. But since the shot turns away from the campers as Tommy approaches them, I'm just going to say that the situation here is unclear. The next to die at 1 hour 12 minutes in is Gary. After he and Ziggy find Cindy and Alice in the cavern under the outhouse, Cindy and Alice fail to mention that Tommy is running around and killing people. While Gary and Ziggy know that there is a killer on the loose, they do not know it is Tommy. Because of that, when Tommy enters the outhouse, Gary is in the same position as everyone else who has died so far. He doesn't have enough time to react to the fact that a friendly face is about to do a lot of harm. Since Tommy hasn't missed yet, his first swing decapitates and kills Gary. The only situation in which I see Gary living would be if Alice and Cindy had warned him about Tommy, but even then, they were in such a small place that it would have been incredibly difficult to slip past Tommy. Because of this, I'm going to say Gary's death is slated. At 1 hour 22 minutes in, Tommy meets his demise after being stabbed by Cindy in the chest numerous times. As mentioned in the last video, the trend of this witch's curse sees each of our killers die once their murderous crusade is over. And considering that it was Ziggy and Cindy's lives, or Tommy's, I do not think Cindy would have shown him any mercy, leaving Tommy to be dead as hell. At least, for now. Up next is Alice, who is struck in the chest by the undead axe-wielding Tommy at 1 hour 28 minutes in, after Ziggy bleeds on the bones of Fier and the previous killers are resurrected. A part of me wants to say that Alice had a chance, given that Ziggy is the one who bled on the bones, and we know that the undead killers only kill those who get in their way of killing the one who bled on Sarah's bones. But I just don't see a super reasonable way in which Alice would have lived. Looking at just a few moments before her death, if she had stayed seated, considering she had a broken ankle, perhaps she wouldn't have been in Tommy's way and would have been spared. But since the 3 are under the impression that Tommy is dead and they are safe, I think it makes sense that she got up to prove to Cindy that she is strong enough. Now, looking a little beyond the moments before her death, if the three had taken Tommy's axe once he was killed as a precaution, the resurrected Tommy wouldn't have immediate access to that weapon, and perhaps the conditions surrounding Alice's death would have allowed her to avoid obstructing the path to Ziggy. But I just do not think that the group would have been in the mind space to do that. Considering that Cindy just killed the person that she loved. So I do not believe that Alice could have lived. Our final deaths come at 1 hour 32 minutes in, as Cindy and Ziggy die together at the hanging tree, surrounded by the undead Shadyside killers. In an effort to protect her sister, Cindy rushes Tommy, an act that puts her in the killer's way of Ziggy and makes her a target. Ziggy runs, but is too caught up in her sister's failing fight that she is grabbed and stabbed by the milkman. In a rather emotional scene, the sisters lie on the ground facing each other as they are each stabbed in the chest a number of times. Cindy dies to Tommy's axe, and Ziggy dies to the milkman's kitchen knife. This leaves their deaths slated. Wait a moment! Counselor Nick Good is here, and he likes Ziggy, so he desperately attempts to perform CPR on the girl who has died from stab wounds. I did some very light research and found that if being stabbed has caused someone to go into cardiac arrest, CPR could potentially help them. However, I really think that Ziggy has been stabbed far too many times for CPR to do anything. Suspiciously, Nick's CPR works and Ziggy is revived. This is how, in 1994, Dina and the others know to kill Sam to stop the killers from coming after her. So Ziggy could've and did live. But boohoo, Nick strangely doesn't use his magical CPR powers on Cindy, and because she tried to stop the killers, I'm going to say that her death is slated. All in all, Fear Street Part 2 leaves us with 12 kills. However, according to the articles in the previous film, 12 died at Camp Nightwing. They probably aren't including Ziggy, which would mean at least 13 died, and if they aren't including Tommy, then at least 14 died. But for the sake of keeping it simple, we're just gonna go with the 12 deaths that I mentioned. Of the dead, a whopping 7 were slated, 4 were unclear, and only 1 could have lived. And also, that 1 happened to actually live. The Camp Nightwing killer was just super brutal. 1 hit with his axe and his victims were goners. And considering that most of the victims knew and trusted Tommy, they hardly stood a chance. Anyways, thank you all for watching today's video. If you have any thoughts to add or movies you'd like me to take a look at next, leave a comment below. Also, please consider leaving a like and subscribe to support me. As always, be good people, love others, and love yourselves. Peace.